George Orwell's dystopian novel 1984, from which we have derived the words Big Brother.
And a happy Wednesday night to all of you listening and tuning into our live feed on the Facebook stream. And I'm Sarah Louise, your producer for this edition of Her, Human Equal Rights with a Focus on Her. We are here with our host, Leslie Rubio, and ready to discuss a topic that a lot of people probably don't even know about, which is called DARVO, an acronym that we're going to discuss at length tonight. Without further ado, I will turn it over to Leslie. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you so much for tuning in tonight. Welcome to Her, Human Equal Rights with the Focus on Her. Before we begin our discussion on DARVO tonight, I want to remind you that we are a community radio station with an all-volunteer staff. We would love to partner with your business or group. We are a progressive station that provides programming like Democracy Now! And Pacifica. We have local shows like this show and In the Frequency of Hope on Monday nights with Stephanie, Citizen Voices with Jay Tubb on Sunday evenings, the Sarah West Love Show that runs on Tuesday evenings, and Richmond Business Babes with Lisa Linnell and Sarah Louise. Great programming, local programming that we have. We need your help, though, to keep doing this kind of work. Again, we're all volunteers, all volunteer staff, and we need your help. Please consider helping us by donating on our website, theworkfm.org, or on our Facebook page, The Work FM. We have bills to pay, electric, cable, rent, and equipment needs. We're also looking for more volunteers who are interested in joining us at the station. Do you have an idea for a show? Do you want to learn how to produce and board op for some of our current live shows? Do you want to be our tech guru that handles simulcasting events? You can easily become a part of our volunteer staff and enjoy the opportunities that this provides. We need your help. Monthly sustainable donations are a great way to help provide a steady stream of revenue to the Work FM. Please consider donating monthly. $5 per month, $10, which is $60 annually. $10 a month, $120 annually. Or $20 a month, whatever you can afford. This helps sustain the work that we're doing and allows us to have local shows like this. Our call-in number tonight is 804-464-1089 if you want to call while we're discussing our topic for tonight's show. So DARVO is the acronym used for Deny, Attack, and Reverse Victim and Offender. Let me tell you what that means again. Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. So DARVO refers to a reaction perpetrators of wrongdoing, particularly sexual offenders, may display in response to being held accountable for their behavior. The perpetrator or offender may deny the behavior, attack the individual doing the confronting, and reverse the roles of victim and offender such that the perpetrator assumes the victim role and turns the true victim or the whistleblower into an alleged offender. This occurs, for instance, when an actually guilty perpetrator assumes the role of falsely accused and attacks the accuser's credibility and blames the accuser of being the perpetrator of a false accusation. So hopefully you understand sort of how DARVO operates and what that means now. We can see instances where DARVO is happening over and over again. This particular term was coined by a research team at the University of Oregon, specifically Jennifer Freed, and the University of California, Santa Cruz, who identified the pattern alleged abusers use to deflect attention away from themselves and back to the person making the accusation. Throughout the United States, women are asked to stay quiet about what happened. They are blamed and attacked about what happened. Their appearance, where they were, what they had to drink is often used against them, and they are painted as having welcomed a sexual assault, somehow that they could have prevented just by dressing differently, not going somewhere alone, not having one more drink, not attending a party. Why are women blamed for their own sexual assault? Well, that has to do with Darvo. So I want to play for you. I want to let you listen to Dr. Freed's explanation of Darvo.
Yep.
So,
One second.
yep.
Have your sound up.
Okay. So you can just hear, since she's the one that coined the phrase, I think it's best to hear it directly from her. So here we go.
All right, we're having technical
Sorry about
difficulties.
that.
Let's try.
Oh, sorry about that.
Okay.
So sorry.
That's okay.
Okay, so we're going to try this again one more time. Sorry about that.
Tell us again who this is and what we're...
This is Dr. Freed, who had coined the phrase Darvo, which again means deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender.
Okay.
So here we go.
And it is a strategy that some individuals use to avoid accountability when they're being confronted with an allegation about some wrongdoing that they've been alleged to have committed. Deny is saying you didn't do it, but we've noticed that some denials are more extreme than others. So in a Darvo denial, you might see a denial of even things that you obviously did do, in addition to the primary thing you're trying to deny. So you might deny having sexually assaulted somebody, and you might deny having been drunk when it was obvious you were drunk. The attack is to attack the credibility of the person making the allegation. So that could take the form of attacking somebody's motivations. You might say, you are lying, you're just doing this to hurt me. Or it may take the form of attacking their mental ability. You're crazy. And then the RVO, for reverse victim and offender, is the most pernicious and is very confusing to people, because what happens is the person being held accountable takes the victim role and says, I'm the victim here. You're hurting my reputation. This particular part of Darvo can seriously confuse people. It's my opinion that we just saw.
All right, so you got to hear Dr. Freed talk about what goes on with Darvo. Again, it's a strategy used to avoid accountability. Darvo denial is denial of things you obviously did do, in addition to the primary thing that you are trying to deny. Mm-hmm. So we're going to give an example of that, which is Brett Kavanaugh. So you deny the sexual assault, but then you also denied that you were drunk. He is a classic example of Darvo. So the deny part, he denies ever doing it. What he said was, I denied the allegation immediately, unequivocally, and categorically. The attack part, he attacks Dr. Ford, Democrats, and the deep state. This is Kavanaugh's testimony as he yelled at the microphone and then shed some oddly timed tears. This is what he said. This whole 2-week effort has been a calculated and orchestrated political hit fueled with apparent pent-up anger about President Trump and the 2016 election, fear that has been unfairly stoked about my judicial record, revenge on behalf of the Clintons, and millions of dollars and money from outside left-wing opposition groups. This is a circus. The consequences will extend long past my nomination. So that's the exact quote of what he said. And so that's the attack part. And so basically, Brett Kavanaugh called Dr. Ford a liar and a part of some vendetta machine that decided to create decades of sexual predation to derail him. Considering that most rapists never see a day in jail, and Anita Hill's own testimony didn't stop Justice Clarence Thomas from happening, it's a wild idea. So fabricating rape reports is not a revenge plot in Democrats' pockets. Now let's go to the reverse victim and offender part. Mr. Kavanaugh insists that he is the real victim. This is what he said. The day after the allegation appeared, I told this committee that I wanted a hearing as soon as possible to clear my name. I demanded a hearing for the very next day. Unfortunately, it took the committee 10 days to get to this hearing. In those 10 long days, as was predictable, and as I predicted, my family and my name have totally and permanently been destroyed by vicious and false additional accusations. The 10-day delay has been harmful to me and my family, to the Supreme Court, and to the country. So those were his exact words, which is part of the reverse victim and offender. In his world, in Mr. Kavanaugh's world, the people he violated aren't the victims. He is the victim. He doesn't care about the truth being fully investigated. He cares that he might not get the seat on the Supreme Court. The pain is about him, his feelings, his reputation, his level of comfort. He wants us all to sympathize with him, to cover up the fact that violent serial abusers aren't the norm. They are in the tiny minority. So that's the reverse victim and offender part, and that's a prime example of that. The attack part of Darvo is to attack the credibility of the person making the allegation, attacking their motivations, saying you're lying, accused, you're doing this to hurt me, or the accused attacks their mental ability. You're crazy. The person being held accountable takes the victim role. Judge Kavanaugh denied allegations of sexual assault, but also denied other things that happened, like he had too much to drink at the party. How many women will actually be helped by telling their stories? So I'm thinking about Me Too right now, because this all relates to that. All of it is sort of interwoven, Darvo, for sure. Because anytime a woman comes forward and tells her story, she faces not only this deny, attack, reverse victim and offender syndrome, I'm going to call it, but she risks her reputation, possibly her job. She makes herself vulnerable. She also loses friends in the process, because anytime a person steps forward to tell their story, people back away from them. They don't want to be associated with them anymore unless they're their true friends, true supporters, acquaintances, work partners, coworkers tend to, wow, this lady's come out and told this horrible thing that's happened to her. I just really can't handle it. I'm gonna move away from her. So the Ashley Judds of the world, the Angelina Jolinas of the world that tell their stories. Okay, these are women that have privilege, positions where they can make their voice loud and heard. But what about the women who labor in obscurity at minimum wage jobs and can be fired at the drop of a hat, who are at-will employees? Those women that want to share their stories of Darvo have all kinds of risks involved. The idea that educated men in authority or leadership positions, that they don't do stuff like this, the stereotype that somehow it's hard for us to believe doctors, lawyers, judges are capable of sexually assaulting women. This is what happens in our world. Even men who can be champions for women's rights are somehow not to be challenged on accusations of harassment, sexual assault, or any other type of crime that involves this. But they do commit acts of sexual hostility and sexual assault towards women. The idea that particular kinds of men wouldn't commit the crimes of sexual assault, harassment, or hostility merely because of their job positions is difficult to believe. Many times, the men that do this are in a management or supervisory role, which makes it even more difficult for a woman to feel like she can come forward or report the harassment, the assault, whatever is being done to her. Men in these positions are easily able to invoke DARVO. Again, deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. And the primary reason women do not report is fear. Fear of being retaliated against, fear of losing their jobs, fear of not being believed, fear of being humiliated, fear of being punished, fear of being isolated. So, I want to ask, do you have a story to share? Or someone else's story that demonstrates this kind of fear, or someone who did report and DARVO was used? If you do, please call us. We want to hear from you. 804-464-1089. Our lines are open.
Or comment on the live stream. And I want to say, too, while you were talking about Kavanaugh, the point came to my mind, talking about privilege, that it's very often the accuser comes from the point of privilege, and the woman, whoever she is not necessarily a person of means, a person who has any sort of support around her. And that is what makes this behavior even harder to witness and harder to watch. In the case of Dr. Ford and Brett Kavanaugh, she did have the means. She did not want it to go public. She was trying to keep, everything quiet, and still, I believe it could have been handled better by our Senate committee that the letter anonymously went to. But, because she did have a public platform and being a professor, but also, a supportive family, that she was able to proceed and go testify against her, who she was accusing.
Right.
But that when you see the points of DARVO, I feel like this is just putting a name to behavior that's been there all along. That we
already know.
We already know it's there, right? For women, any woman, that the person who violates you in some way, their first initial reaction is to deny. I didn't do that. No, I didn't. No, that wasn't me. Then they get accusatory. They attack you. They come right back and, well, it's her fault for the way she dressed. It's her fault for, she was drinking and she was asking for it. I mean, those are the comments we hear all the time in cases of domestic violence, sexual abuse, sexual offenses. And then, yes, you make yourself the accused, the victim instead. Poor, pitiful me, have sympathy for me, take it easy on me. I didn't do this. So it's really, I feel like when I read this, I was like, oh, it's just putting a name to the behavior that we have witnessed over and over and over again.
Exactly right.
It's going on right now here in Virginia with our lieutenant governor. Allegations, have come out. 2 different women have said that he sexually violated, abused them years ago at a conference. And I have to say steadfastly, I believe the women. If you're going to believe Dr. Ford in that situation, you have to believe these women that are making accusations now about someone else in the public life. Just because you like someone or don't like someone shouldn't be the reason. We have to consider the facts, and we have to support women, all women.
Exactly right.
Playing into the Me Too and like the Equal Rights Amendment that many women are fighting for and talking about. I feel like this exactly plays into that, and we're at a really interesting, but at the same time, a really horrible time in our country's history where there is a prevalent behavior. In order for it to be a big enough of a pattern across races, across classes, across, whether it was at college or it's in the workplace, or that we have to put a name, we have to put an acronym to this. And, for people that say, oh, well, I have sons, I don't want my sons to be accused wrongfully. Well, if they didn't do it, they won't be accused wrongfully. And we'll get to the bottom of it when we give everybody their due process. That's the hope. That's the hope.
And to go back to that, so I think that because of this pattern of deny, attack, reverse victim and offender, the people who actually do this work and study sexual assault, sexual violence, domestic violence, this kind of work, they notice this pattern. And I'm sure we all noticed it, and like you said, there wasn't a name for it. So because they saw it over and over and over again and researched it and looked at every different aspect of it, from talking to survivors, from being involved in groups that support women who have suffered domestic violence, sexual assault, any one of these things, they saw this pattern repeated over and over and over again. So they wanted to identify it with a name so that it could be understood better, explained better, and actually heard. Because, if you just see it now, let's just take Lieutenant Governor Justin Fairfax. Right. So, we've heard it already that he was accused first by one woman of sexual assault, and then the next woman accused him of actually raping her when they were in college. So immediately what he said was he denied that happened. So there's the deny. After that, I don't think I remember any attacking. Do you?
Well, he did get very, I would say, super defensive, and he challenged her in public. He in the papers, he told the press, I dare her to come, and that was when it was just the first woman. I dare her to try to sue me or come after me because it's not true. It didn't happen. So it was kind of a mixture. It wasn't a straight out attack, but he did say those words, I dare her. And I thought
he
to
was
myself
it was sort of
time,
threatening.
Yeah. To me, when I heard that and the nightly news, channel 6, 8, and 12 here in Richmond, they were showing the clip of him with all the reporters at our state, the congressional building downtown.
Yep.
And he looked right at the cameras and said, "I dare her to come after me." And it was like, oh, no, that should not ever be your response. I mean, it's one thing to deny and say, that wasn't me, I didn't do that. But then wouldn't your next, if you're truly innocent, I would think the next logical step would be, let's give everybody their due process and let the facts come out. And I wanted to point out, too, during this show at some point, I'll do it since the phones are quiet. And again, our phone number is right there on the screen. If you're local, give us a call. We'd love to, get your opinion on what you think of this. But that, what was I going to say? Now I've lost my train of thought. But that we have to, yes, give everybody their due process, but a lot of people still claim, oh, well, women make it up. Women falsely claim all the time. No, they don't. You look at the research, you look at the statistics. The number of women who falsely claim something, falsely accuse someone is something like 4% of the time. Women don't lie when it comes to sexual assault, rape, any kind of, something going on in the workplace, in your home. And women don't lie about this the way we're accused by the general public. Men and women accuse other women. Oh, well, you're lying. She's lying. I can tell she's not telling the truth. No, you can't. You're not psychic. So we have to put our faith then in judges, in the law system, to try to get to the bottom of facts. And it is really difficult when it's a he said, she said situation. But again, why would any woman willingly put themselves in that position, in that situation, unless something happened to you and you're just trying to get justice? So I think the number of people that lie when it comes to sexual abuse and violence are minimal. Personally, that's me. That's my opinion.
No, I think there's actually stats for that. Maybe we could try to look it up. And I think you were right. It's in about the 3 to 4% range. So that leaves, even if we just want to say 5%, so that leaves 95% of women are telling the truth, and only 5% are not telling the truth. So yeah, it's a real thing. It happens. I want to go back to Nita Hill when that was all happening. When that case was happening at that time, sexual harassment wasn't really being talked about a lot. During that whole testimony and what went on,
I love her pieces, and the interviews I've seen with her recently are amazing. I just immediately think of that Pepsi can when we talk about that case. Wasn't it a can of Pepsi?
I don't remember
I think
that.
It was Pepsi.
Okay.
And yeah, that some sort of lewd something happened in our U.S., wasn't it a court somewhere that he worked, and wasn't it a federal?
I believe that's right. She worked from him. Yes.
Yeah. And so I'm sorry.
And let's think about this part too. So a lot of times when women who have been harassed, sexually assaulted, any of this come forward, it's because they've been triggered by something. In the case of Christine Blasey Ford, Brett Kavanaugh being nominated to a lifetime appointment on the Supreme Court was a trigger for her because his name suddenly came back into the spotlight, and she was reminded of what happened to her. And then she felt that she had a civil duty to report what had happened. Even though she was afraid, all those fear things stepped in. No, maybe they're not going to believe me. Maybe I'm going to lose my job. I'm going to be humiliated. I might be retaliated against. So all those things came into play. So anytime, and it's going to be the same thing with Mr. Fairfax. So his first accuser came forward because she was triggered when she saw his name, that he was being elevated to a higher position in politics. Once once that happened, she saw that name, she got that trigger, and she decided, oh, I need to do something about it. I've got to call. I've got to figure out who I can tell, what I can do about it. I need to make sure that people know that this is what happened to me, and because this person is now going to be in a position of authority, and I feel compelled and my civic duty to tell what this person did. So remember that a lot of times it is because someone is being triggered that they come forward to tell their story. A lot of times it's buried. It's buried, it stays buried, it doesn't come out until there is a triggering event that causes this person to remember their victimization and feel like either they do want to tell or they actually then just suffer the trauma all over again because they're re-traumatized, because nothing did come of it. No justice did happen. So now they're stuck in sort of a trauma state that they have to either work through on their own, through a therapist, hopefully they have, or they come forward like Blasey Ford did and like Miss Tyson did about Mr. Fairfax. Again, I want to tell you the number is 804-464-1089. If you have a story that you would like to share, either your own personal story or someone else's story that you know about, we would love to hear about that story and the instance of Darvo, deny, attack, reverse, victim, and offender. Please do call us and let us know if you've experienced this or you know other people who have.
And I posted a link to an article here that had some statistics on false reports, and I put that in the comments of the live stream. And it says, quoting from the article, "This may be hard to believe, especially considering that rape is a felony, punishable with years of prison. However, from the National Registry of Exonerations," I didn't know there was such a thing.
Never heard of it.
Since their records begin in 1989, in the U.S., there are only 52 cases where men convicted of sexual assault were exonerated because it turned out they were falsely accused.
Okay.
They put it somewhere between 2 and 10%. It's hard to say exactly. I think I read another report that had the 4%. The most detailed study ever conducted of sexual assault reports to police was undertaken for the British Home Office in the early 2000s. Out of 216 total complaints they classified as false, only 126 of those had even gotten to the stage where the accuser lodged a formal complaint. Only 39 out of those 216 named a suspect. Only 6 cases actually led to an arrest, and only 2 cases led to charges being brought against the other person before they were actually deemed false. So even if someone cries falsely for some reason, maybe they're embarrassed, maybe they're, took it too far in their mind, but the other, who knows, I don't know. But only 2 women in England in the early 2000s got to the point where they actually got it to court and had the other person arrested and then still find out it's false. 2 out of 216. That's more like 1%.
Right?
I mean, so, I get really tired of that argument when people say, oh, women lie all the time. Not about this. Not about this at all.
I believe women and girls. I believe women and girls.
I do too.
There's no reason not to, in my mind.
Let's talk about that too with the teenage and under 22 aspect, because when women are that young, my oldest daughter goes to college in Florida, and as a freshman last year, she had a very weird and unwanted and uncalled for advance by someone on a first date. And she went to, we advised her as her parents to go to campus counseling and say, this is what happened. And so she did that, and she also told her RA. The guy, that was in spring of last year, as of this current spring semester, he is no longer at the school.
All right.
And this was not his first offense.
Okay.
But she had to go to like a little jury of professors and tell exactly this is what happened.
Yep.
This is what led up to it. This is what happened at the moment. And this is what happened after. He actually attacked her. And thank God.
Because she resisted.
She's okay. Oh, yeah. Well, she's a dancer. She has the pirouette of death.
Sure.
So,
but I mean, she resisted some type of advance that he made.
She physically shoved him back and screamed and, yeah.
Unwanted, whatever it was he was doing.
Completely unwanted. And, we got a call coming in. But yeah, he denied, and I mean, it was the whole thing.
Deny, attack, reverse victim, and offender. And talking again about the Anita Hill case, when she did actually come forth and tell her story, she was told she was lying. She was told that she had some kind of fantasy about Clarence Thomas wanting to be with her, and that she was crazy. So back then, and even still now, people do not want to believe that these types of things happen. With that being said, we have a caller. One.
Yes.
Can you tell us your name? Hello.
Can you hear us?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was listening to Leslie. This is Frida Cathcart.
Hi, Frida.
I can't hear.
Okay, hold on. Let me fix the audio. Just a second.
1 second. Yeah. There we go. Yes.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
I was listening to you. Sorry.
Go ahead, caller.
Yeah. Do you say your name or do you just talk?
Whatever you want to do.
Okay, well, this is Frida Cathcart. Hi, Leslie.
Hi, Frida.
And I was just going to share a story of a girl that I grew up with that was attacked in the village where I grew up. And the guy held her down. There was another friend of his that was watching him as he held her down, was strangling her, and the attack left bruises on her neck, and actually her blood vessels popped in her eye. And the way that some of the people in the village where we lived said that she was dressing provocatively. This was then back in the 1970s or 80s, I think early 80s, that basically suggesting that she deserved it. But I don't think that they saw the bruises or the damage that was done to her. But anyhow, he didn't get convicted, and he went on to become a serial rapist and kill somebody. And all those times he did it.
So this person that didn't get convicted at that very point in time went on to rape or assault other women, and then actually did get convicted.
He never got convicted.
Oh my God.
Never got convicted.
Never got convicted. Every time that he would, when he'd have an accuser that would go to trial, they wouldn't let them bring other people to testify. The gal who I grew up with, she went out to one trial, and they wouldn't allow them to introduce evidence because he hadn't been convicted of the crime. And when she went to trial, she was only 13 at the time, and when she went to trial, well, they were trying to get an indictment. The prosecutor didn't present the evidence of the pictures of the bruises on her neck and her blood vessels in her eyes being popped, and there was witnesses and stuff. It was, either he was an idiot or there was corruption, or I don't know.
That is terrible.
Well, thank you for sharing that, Frida, and that's exactly right. So, even when we do report, when women do report, when they do get the courage to step forward and tell their story, again, they're not believed. They're accused of provoking the attack on them or the rape or the sexual assault because of what they were wearing, where they were, how many drinks they had, all kinds of. So that's, part of the Darvo attack, right? Deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. So
yeah.
that's.
I just think it's really important in this atmosphere of Me Too, and I'm a survivor myself, about learning. Hopefully, we evolve out of the rape culture that we've been steeped in for generations now. That there's also consciousness when it comes to different triggers and different psychology as far as when women freeze, and it starts off consensually and something triggers the woman and she freezes, and then in her mind it's not consensual anymore, but perhaps something's conveyed to the guy, and wondering, like, what is the spectrum as far as believing survivors and their experience and the realness of that for them. Mm-hmm. And also whether or not a man did something like that was obvious violence, like bruises, and obviously the woman was trying to fight and get away, and or when it was a consensual relationship where it just the woman just froze, didn't say anything, just froze. And I think that's an important thing to introduce into the current situation with Fairfax. I don't know what's happening with that, but there are instances of that where it's not that the woman's lying, it's that perhaps that women can have some different perspectives about what an experience is compared to the man. But I think when it's a man of power, like Clarence Thomas was with Anita Hill, that's different. Bill Clinton, Monica Lewinsky. Mm-hmm. I think when it's somebody that's of power, Matt Lauer is disgusting. Bill Cosby is seriously disgusting.
Sure. And what you brought up.
Things. And then the other is, I hope that we evolve as a society to figure out like how we can work through these different things as far as believing a woman and what's happening, and then if somebody's done something that's of violence, if they're held accountable. If they're doing harm and violence, then that's important that they're held accountable, because predators, if it's somebody who's a predator, they'll go on to hurt other people.
Sure. I think your point is very important, that and I'm going to go back to a topic that I discussed on this show before called ACE, Adverse Childhood Experiences. Mm-hmm. So if these kind of things happen to you growing up, then your immediate response as an adult is to freeze, fight, or flight. When this subject first started getting explored, it was just fight or flight. Now we know there's a freeze element, which happens to women who are in being sexually assaulted, and it could be because this has happened to them before, or they grew up in some type of home environment where they experienced adverse childhood experiences, which could be anything from molestation, sexual assault, parents that were alcoholics, drug addicts, divorce. There's all different things that are classified as adverse childhood experiences. It doesn't have to be something as drastic as assault, rape, even if you're not being hurt yourself or harmed yourself. If there's domestic violence in your household and you're witnessing that and experiencing that, it's going to change how you are as an adult. Unless you get help from that, unless you talk about that experience is going to go with you throughout your life, and at some point you are going to be triggered by it, or you might even get in a situation, a relationship that exhibits those same things, and there's going to be a point where you're going to have that fight, flight, or freeze that you brought up. So thanks for bringing that into the conversation, Frida.
Sure.
And thanks for calling.
Sure. I wish I could remember the name of it, but we did a 1 Billion Rising event here like 2 weeks ago in Roanoke, and a woman came up who was saying there's some type of sex ed curriculum that they've been doing that decreases the incidence of sexual assault as well as domestic violence that they've been teaching in the schools. And have you all heard of it? Do you know the name of it?
I read something. Oh, my mic wasn't on, sorry. I did read something about that online, and I can't remember the name of it either. But yes, they are trying to incorporate more information for young teens in our school system about domestic violence, sexual assaults, so that kids are aware this is not healthy, this is not right, this is not, especially when it's in the family.
Yeah.
Because a lot of kids, and you were telling the story about someone in your hometown, to be 13 and in that horrible situation. I mean, no kid should be. I mean, we wouldn't want anybody to be assaulted anytime, but especially when it's kids, when it's teenagers, that's horrible. It's absolutely awful. So I'm all for let's get more education in our schools so that kids know this is not an okay touch. This isn't,
Agreed. The thing about that is sometimes it's hard to get that type of program into public school system because of the sensitivity of it and the nature of it, and then age appropriateness of it.
Well, that's the same.
It's resisted.
It's the same mentality that says, oh, we shouldn't give out condoms at all. Well, guess what? You're going to have more pregnancies if you don't give out the free condoms.
So, yeah, there is some resistance to that. And so over time, it is becoming more accepted in some school systems, but it really is up to the individual school system and the Board of Supervisors, which is why we all need to make sure that we vote every time there is a local election, a state election, any election at all. It's very important to vote for people who align with your values, because do you want people on the school board who don't want that program in your school, or that do want that program in your school? So thanks for bringing that up, because we all need to vote. It's very important who, at the local level, at any level, we need to vote people in that align with our values. But thank you a lot for calling in, Frida.
Sure, thank you.
So as we talk about this subject some more, and we sort of touched on that adverse childhood experiences, which was, again, one of the shows that I had a while back where we talked all about that. We had a guest on the show that discussed it.
Really good show. And that was something I was not really aware of, that research was even being done, but it stands to reason that if you have this trauma in your young years, that you are potentially, in ways, more of a target. Because especially like you're talking about that freeze moment for, I think, teenagers, boys and girls, I think for, anyone who is the victim in these situations, if you have a history, it's not, we see the movies where, something bad happened to her and she took her power into her own hands and got even. Yeah, that's not real life. That's
No,
not
it's
real
not.
life at all.
And I can also see how adverse childhood experiences can play into the Darvo as well.
Mm-hmm. Sure. For the guy, yeah.
Sure. Let's talk about that Darvo again.
Yes.
Again, it is deny, attack, and reverse victim and offender. We see it happen lots of times in lots of different ways whenever a woman steps forward to tell her story of sexual assault, domestic violence, whatever it is. And currently our judicial system tends to err on the side of the accused, unfortunately, even though there are laws in place that could fairly convict them and punish them. A lot of times they are let off. They are sent to some kind of anger management class. Specifically, domestic violence is sent to family and children's courts system. So it's not even treated as a criminal offense.
You gave that great example several shows ago about if I'm in a parking lot and a man comes up to me and slaps me across the face and calls me horrible names, then I can press charges.
You call the police.
Well, yeah, obviously. I'm probably screaming at that point. It could be somebody else calling 911 on my behalf. But yes, the police get involved, but it goes to criminal court.
Because you were assaulted.
Unless the guy that slapped me and called me names is my husband.
Or your partner.
Or partner, right.
Your
It doesn't
roommate.
even have to be a marriage, but yeah. If it's someone I'm in a relationship with, all of a sudden, that changes the whole game for me as a victim. I couldn't believe that. I honestly could not believe that. I mean, I've heard of family court. I've heard of, the different courtrooms, but I never thought about what if he can claim, oh, she's my old girlfriend, or we have this on again, off again. They can say anything.
Well, it's just treated differently.
And
it's just immediately referred to a different court system.
Right. The eyes of the law, you get different judges, you get different rules, you get different allowances, you get different, I think the amount of somebody believing you is different because they say, well, if she's been with him so many years off and on, then, it's probably fine. He attacked you. No, it's not fine.
Definitely not.
What do we do to change that?
I believe we need to require that people who work in the judicial system learn about adverse childhood experiences.
That, and I think we have to pay a lot more attention when we're having elections, because eventually certain people who are elected into certain offices, they get to appoint those lifetime judges in your state, at the state level, at the federal level, and those are the courts that are going to help you or not.
That's exactly right.
So it all comes down to elections yet again.
Yes.
It's only February and we're talking about elections, people.
Well, we still have a lot of work to do before we get to November. So when we're talking about Darvo, the most obvious type of sexual harassment is gender hostility, and it's the most common. Like when we heard locker room talk from Donald Trump, his words that he said can be categorized as sexual hostility. Sexual hostility is using words that are sexually hostile and derogatory towards women, words that are said to women and about women publicly. These words express a hostility toward women that are sexually flavored. It conveys to women that they are reduced to their genitalia, to their sexuality, and to their femaleness. So it's meant to demean. It's meant to put you in your place so that you won't report, you won't do anything about it. It's meant to hurt you, harm you, attack you, deny, attack, reverse.
And I reverse places with you because all of a sudden I'm the one being picked on for my locker room talk.
Right.
How dare you? If I want to grab him by the hoo-ha, that's my right. No. I don't know. I think that there is, I want to also make the point you were talking, everything you were just saying. The idea came to me also, we have to be really, really protective of our trans community because trans women are probably the number one to get harassed, targeted, assaulted.
Yep.
When we hear from the media and we hear from certain lawmakers in Congress all the time, oh, we have to have separate bathrooms. Oh, you have to go to the bathroom of where you were born. Listen, a trans person doesn't assault anybody. A trans person is simply trying to live their best life. So no, you don't make, no. That's another form of attack.
It is. And
then when you confront those people and say, this is what you're saying and that's wrong because of this, then they deny. So sometimes the Darvo goes out of order.
Sure.
But yeah, I think that the same basic principles of reaction and being reactionary when you are being accused of any sort of wrong trespass against somebody. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So we know what Darvo is now. I hope anybody who didn't know what that was knows what it is now and can recognize if it's happening to you. Types and severity of behavior are not the same when we talk about sexual harassment and sexual assault. Sexual assault is the most serious, but lower level, less offensive, less obvious, less grotesque, less heinous types of behavior can be very damaging if they are repeated, if the victim is unable to get away from them, or if the harassed or assaulted person is more vulnerable. So any kind of unwanted sexual attention, which can be something like, hey girl, nice butt, give me a smile, I know you like me even if you're not showing it. Okay, so those kinds of things that are being said are clearly unwanted sexual attention that are most often and frequently more often directed at women. Let's be clear about it. If a guy's walking down the street, I don't see a lot of women hollering out at them. It's something that happens a lot to women, and what are we supposed to do? I think most of us ignore it and just move on. I want to read another thing that I saw on Facebook, which was just a conversation about sexual assault, the Me Too movement, and that type of thing. So I'm just going to read it to you real quick, but this was a conversation that I copied that I saw come up in response to talking about the Me Too movement. And this was from a male Facebook user's perspective. When I was a kid, the clear expectation was that it was the boy's role to overcome the obstacles a girl is required to put up. Even if she really is interested in exploring, it literally was the paradigm we were raised with. If a girl did not put up any resistance, she was to be labeled a SLUT. If she did put up the requisite resistance and the guy failed to score, he was a failure as a man. It goes on to say, whether or not the girl wanted to have sex or even make out was never really at issue. She wants it, but were you man enough? Was she just being a prude? Those were the questions raised if nothing happened. Never did the concept of autonomous mutual consent enter the equation in the way we were socialized.
Yeah.
Looking back on it, it is sick and twisted and destructive. So, I mean, this is how people were taught.
Oh, yeah. I remember those days of notches in the bedpost and the guys on a Monday morning who made out with who and who did what with who and high-fiving in the hallway. Sure, I remember that. That was in the 80s.
Sure.
Well, that long ago. We have a caller. Alicia, are you there?
Yes, I am.
Go right ahead with your thoughts.
Okay. My experience was years ago in the 70s. And I was not actually assaulted, but it was threatened. But if I continued in my college program, I was expected to sleep at the next conference with the professor.
Ooh.
And I knew other girls, other students who had done that in order to keep their grades up and so forth.
Yeah, absolutely.
And,
yeah,
and I chose not to go along with that, and I changed my major the next day from the field I wanted to go in to my second choice, which made a difference for the next 40 years.
Sure.
Certainly. I'm sorry that happened to you.
At that time, if we said anything, I mean, I was just quite sure that if I said anything, it would be dismissed as not important.
Sure.
So I don't know if any of the other women who did say yes to this professor, if they're calling in or what. But I'm glad women today are stronger and better informed than we were. Thank you.
Thank you so much for calling in. We really appreciate that you took the time and shared with us.
We lost her. Okay.
So